Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we'll be doing a tier list breakdown of all the legendary Melomon in the game. That's right, it is finally time for a tier list video. Now, this will be a tier list from a general perspective rather than doing a separate tier list for DPS, one for tanks and one for healers. I wanted to approach it rather from a general understanding of which Melomon are actually going to have some use for you. Whether you're a tank, a DPS, or healer, it's just to give you an understanding of what the actual useful Melomon are, and maybe if someone asks you a question in World Chat, you'll be able to answer it now. Hey, is this a good one? You'll say, yes it is, or no it isn't. So let's show the tier list here quickly. So I'm going to be using this tier list here, but I'm going to jump back into game to show each of the Melomon as well, so you have a visual representation of these skills and awakening skill and special skill, just so you can reference that as I'm talking about it, as opposed to just me talking over the tier list, which is less impactful in my opinion. So starting off, we have our first Melomon in the list, and that is Frost Tiger. Now, Frost Tiger is unfortunately not an amazing Melomon. Its awakening skill is Frost Thunder Hunt, which has a long charge time of 90 seconds, and it is, when dealing core skill damage, have a 10% chance to deal an additional 800% of attack as true damage. The damage multiplier is doubled when the target's HP is below 50%. Now, in theory, you might say to yourself, oh wow, if I'm a core skill abusing class, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to have a chance to deal additional attack as true damage. That sounds epic. But unfortunately, it's just not a very strong DPS ability, even for very heavy core skill using class specs. So compared to the other DPS options available, you will almost never find a reason to use Frost Tiger above the other options available. Now, Frost Tiger's special skill, called Timing, is after successfully interrupting an enemy's casting, increase the damage the target takes from all allies by 5% for 30 seconds. Now, in theory, this has been discussed as a potentially good ability. It's like, say for example, if your tank is running your interrupt, then your tank can put this on and increase the party's damage when they interrupt. But I would say most times your tank's really not going to be the one responsible for interrupting, so they shouldn't run this, nor should they run an interrupt. And if you're a DPS running an interrupt, you're not going to get additional damage from swapping one of your main damage Melomon out for this special skill. In fact, even with the party damage increase, it'll still ultimately result in a DPS loss because of your own personal damage loss. So with that all in mind, let's hop back to the tier list, and unfortunately the Frost Tiger is going to be our first contender for C. It's not really going to be your main Melomon in any situation, and in no particular specs either. Now, the same can't be said for the next Melomon on our list. The Snow Leopard, excuse me. Next up we have the Snow Leopard. Now I'm going to hop back into game here quickly, and let's take a look at the Snow Leopard. Now, the Snow Leopard is the best in slot Melomon for healer specs. That's right, you are looking at our first best in slot in the list. And its ability, Awaken skill, is a increased haste by 25% and all damage by 15%. The second part of this ability is not that important for healers, but that first part is bread and butter. So haste is an insanely important stat for healers, and getting 25% of it more is just absolutely amazing. So that's why this is the best in slot for healers. Now, the special skill of the Snow Leopard is Surrounded by Me. Surrounded by Me deals 6,400% of attack as true damage to all current targets every 15 seconds. Now, in the very early journey pushes, in the main story journey, mainland journey, this actually does a lot of damage. And so if you have a copy of Snow Leopard and you want to equip this special skill only in your journey, then this can basically one-shot your targets every time you come to a new set of enemies. However, as you progress further through the main story, this no longer scales that well with enemies, and you'll be much better off just running your regular DPS Melomon. So from a special skill perspective, this is good in the early game, and then very quickly falls off once you sort of reach class change sort of area. Then you will swap to your main DPS loadout for your Melomon special skills. So that doesn't really contribute too much to the ranking of the Melomon, it's more like a nice bonus. But either way, let's hop back to the tier list, and on account of this being the best in slot Melomon for healers, we have no choice but to put this up in the, let's put it in the S tier. So once we have our first, once we have a best in slot Melomon, we're going to place it quite high up on the tier list. It's a very good Melomon and has additional but somewhat limited capabilities with its special skill in the early journey progression. So very nice Melomon. Next up we have Wings of Light. Now let's hop back into game and take a look at Wings of Light, which I'm currently using as one of my support Melomon, which probably should tell you all you need to know. So, Wings of Light, let's take a look at their awakening skill, Flash of Light. Increase all damage by 76%. When taking damage from a boss, the bonus effect is increased by 19% for 10 seconds. Now, I know what you're thinking, and you're saying to yourself, well gee, haven't they always said that damage is the king when it comes to DPS, and this increases damage by 76%? Shouldn't this be really good? And the answer is, it's okay, but compared to the other options, again for DPS, for the awakening skill, it is not that highly ranked compared to the others. So as good as that sounds in theory, it's really not the best go-to awakening skill for DPS, and unless you don't have any other options, you probably wouldn't be running this. So let's take a look at the Wings of Light's special skill, Radiant Glow. Every 45 seconds, accumulate all the damage you deal to the current target, and in the next 10 seconds, splash 8% of total damage to all enemies around the target. It sounds cool, but unfortunately, it's just not that powerful. Ultimately, it's just an okay special skill that doesn't really have any use in most places of the game. So, nothing that contributes to raising it up in the tier list. So, because of this limited, like I said, if you have it, you have nothing else, you don't have any other of the best Melomon, then this is okay, it'll do the job, but ultimately it's not anywhere near the best in the game. So with that said, our poor Wings of Light is going to end up in the bottom of C tier. Nothing quite ends up in D tier, I think, for legendaries, but let's see, maybe something will show up that deserves the D tier. Anyway, so next up we have Blade Hound. So let's take a look at Blade Hound in game now. Blade Hound is, you guessed it, another best in slot. Blade Hound is an incredible Melomon for tanks. This is your best in slot if you are a tank, and let's take a look at why. Their awakening skill, Combat Form. Increase all damage by 35% and reduce damage taken by 15%. And of course, I'll just gonna say it now, all these numbers that are orange here are gonna increase as the Melomon increases as well. So this gets better and better and better as you level it up. So it's already reducing damage taken by 15%. That's a really good skill for tanks. You need as much damage reduction as you can, especially as bosses get more and more challenging. So this is a clear best in slot for tanks. But furthermore, Blade Hound actually has a very good special skill. It's called Sharpness of Claw. When your HP is above 50%, increase damage dealt to your enemies with HP below 50% by a large amount. Now, this is 110% for me because I have a level 10 Sharpness of Claw. If I reset that back down, you'll see it starts at about 20%, and then maxes, not maxes, but at level 10 is up to 110% damage increase. Now, damage increases at DPS is significant, and this is basically, as long as you can keep your HP above 50%, you're going to be dealing more than double damage anytime the boss is under 50% HP. And once we unlock our third DPS slot for special skills, once you unlock the third special skill slot, this will be your third you would run as DPS, except in some rare conditions, which I will explain when we get to those Melomon. So, with that in mind, we have another best in slot, which also has a useful special skill for DPS. So I would say that this Blade Hound deserves to be at the top of S tier, which is where we'll put it. So a very useful Melomon, best in slot for tanks, and as well a useful special skill for DPS output. So, next up we have Ice Valley Colt. So let's again hop in the game and take a look at Colt. So Ice Valley Colt is another very excellent Melomon. However, it's not excellent for its awakening skill. Let's take a look at this. So their awakening skill is increased crit damage by 80% and the crit rate of the core skill by 20%. This is not that great because as a DPS, we're really chasing the Melomon that are increasing damage dealt. This increased crit damage is only going to affect hits that crit, and increasing the crit rate of only the core skill is too limiting to, compared to other Melomon skills that just increase overall damage output as opposed to these more specific conditions. Now, that said, where it really comes to life is its special skill, Echo. Echo, increase all damage by 40%. The further the distance from the target, the stronger the effect, up to an additional 16%, which means if you're a range class like Ranger or a Scholar, for example, you will be dealing a 56% increase in damage. Now, this is, of course, a level 9 skill. When we set it to 0, it's going to be about 11.2%, but that quickly scales up, as you can see here. So this is a very good special skill. In fact, it is the second best DPS special skill in the game. And yeah, if you're DPS, this is what you're going to run. Even if you're a melee DPS, like a Dark Blade, you're still going to run this because it is a flat damage increase to all of your damage. And that is a bread and butter skill for us as DPS. So with that in mind, we're going to hop back to the tier list and take a look at Colt. And because, you're going to be surprised, but because it's so carried by how good its special skill is, we have our third S. That's right, even if the awakening skill is not that good, the fact that its special skill is absolutely essential for DPS and even better for ranged DPS means it deserves a spot in the S tier. But this is only for its special skill, not for its awakening skill, so do keep that in mind. So, next up we have the Shadow Raven. Now, Shadow Raven's an interesting one, so let's take a look at that in game. Now, Shadow Raven, let's take a look at its awakening skill first off. Awakening skill with Insight, increase all damage by 76%, but increase damage taken by 10%. And when your HP is below 90%, the bonus is further increased by 19%. So this is in theory a nice awakening skill. Again, it's not the best in slot. However, it's pretty good if you don't have any other options for your main awakening skill as a DPS. So it's alright, but it's not the best. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's look at its special skill because this is an interesting one. Invisible Friend. For each surviving companion, increase in the party on the field, increase attack by 2.3%. And you can see here that if I used all my currency, this can go up to 7.9%. Now, in the early game, people were like really excited about this. Oh my god, if I'm in a party, it's increasing my attack a whole bunch. But as we've discovered that the meta strongly favors damage increase over attack increase, we realized that this one just doesn't cut. It isn't like up to the same level as the damage increasing special skills. Now, even with that said, I will say that there is a special use case for this, and when you can get this to a very high level and go into Dragon, which is a 6-person fight, then there is a argument to run Invisible Friend, especially if you're a healer because your heals will scale off of that attack. So as a healer, you would obviously not be running damage special skills in your heal spec because damage percentage does not increase your healing. So in that sense, you might actually, if you're healing Dragon, you might actually consider running Invisible Friend, because if you have this at level 5, for example, let's call it 8%, that's going to be a 48% attack increase as long as everyone remains alive. So as a healer, that is actually quite good. So do keep this in mind that this is definitely a contender for being run during Dragon, specifically because that is 6-man content, which scales this more than other group content and solo content. So because of that, we're going to hop back to the tier list here, and I would say Shadow Raven deserves to be just above the others here, and maybe we'll put it at B tier because, again, it has a little more use case of its special skill more so than the other two at C tier, enough that it deserves to be pushed up into its own tier. So. Next up we have the, okay, next. So, next up we have the Demon Hound, which is single-handedly the most important Melomon in the entire game, and as much as a joke as what I just did, it is the case. It is easy SS. I'm spoiling the result because everyone should know this by now, but if you don't, here you go. The best Melomon in the game is Demon Hound. Why is it the best? Because it's got the best awakening skill for DPS, including for tanks and healers in their DPS spec. It's got the best special skill for DPS. It is the best Melomon in the game currently, and it is the most important one. Anytime you have any selection chest for dupes of Melomon, anytime you have a Melomon choice, choose Demon Hound. You're going to, this is one of the few Melomon where you're going to want to collect dupes to both max out its star level and its special skill as well. You're going to need a lot of Demon Hound dupes, and let's hop into game and understand why this monster Melomon is a clear SS. Now the first thing you'll notice is, yep, I am running Demon Hound right here in my main slot, so proof is in the pudding. I'm running it. It's maxed as well, as max as we can at the moment. Oh no, I need more materials. Dang, okay. So anyway, let's take a look at what makes this Demon Hound so special. So first off, let's look at its special skill. Sorry, its awakening skill. Pure Malice, a 60-second charge time, which is lower than a lot of them, and a 17-second duration. Now this is of course because we have the Demon Hound leveled up, starred up, so keep that in mind. So when triggering a crit hit or determination, increase damage by 72%. Well, not bad. When triggering both crit hit and determination, the damage bonus stacks. Oh, I see. So that means that 72% when you get a lucky crit, which is a crit hit and a determination in the same hit, is going to increase your damage dealt by 144%. And because as a DPS character, the two most important stats that you're trying to balance out around the 35% mark is crit and determination, that means that this is the absolute perfect synergy for the main DPS build that everyone's building. So yeah, this is by far the best main Melomon, and pretty much if you're a DPS, even as a free-to-play DPS, you're going to be basically hamstringed until you get your first copy of Demon Hound. All the others, remember I told you, oh, this is okay if you don't have it, it's okay if you don't have it. The don't have it I was referring to is Demon Hound. So until you get Demon Hound, everything else is a second best, and then Demon Hound is the best DPS awakening skill by far, by a long shot. It is just incredible, and when you start dealing like insane damage, you know, hundreds of millions per hit, depending on your class, you're just gonna sit there and be like, oh man, I need more Demon Hounds. So, and if that wasn't enough, then we get to its special skill. Your turn. Every 10 seconds, increase damage taken by all current enemies from you by 21% for 10 seconds. When there is only one enemy, this effect is doubled. So, this is very nice because it is one of the few, it is an AoE effect, so if you're in waves, for example, then this will affect all enemies, and it is quite nice. So 21% increase in damage taken from all enemies, and then 42% if there's only one enemy, like a boss. So very, very good DPS special skill here. And if you're asking, well, what is the best install for DPS? We've already seen one of them. It's Colt special skill Echo, and this one here, the Demon Hound special skill, Your Turn plus Echo plus Sharpness of Claw. This is your best in slot for 99% of content. Now there is one exception to this, which I will explain when we get to that Melomon, so do keep that in mind, but 99% of the time you will run this. So let's hop back to the list, and we've already placed Demon Hound where it belongs, in the SS tier. Now, speaking of the exception I just mentioned, we've actually gone right to it next. Let's talk about Thunder. So let's hop back into game and take a look at Thunder. So Thunder's awakening skill, Thunder Cloud Charge, increase all damage by 40%. The effect increases by 4% for each awakening in a single battle. To be honest, not that great. This is not at all why you would consider Thunder. This is an average awakened skill. It's okay. If you don't have Demon Hound, you could run this until you get Demon Hound. It's fine. However, the reason why Thunder is actually pretty good is because of its special skill, Arcane Resonance. And the reason why this is a good skill, and it depends heavily on the content, is because it increases your attack by a percentage every 20 seconds and just continues to stack until the end of battle. Now, there are some game modes where this is the best to run. For example, Waves of Horror, where sometimes you can battle for up to 7 minutes. So if you're in Waves of Horror for 7 minutes, and your attack increases by 10% every 20 seconds, that means 30% a minute, 7 minutes, you guessed it, that is a 210% increase in your attack. So it doesn't matter what damage special skills you're running, if the battle is going to last more than say 5 minutes, you're going to want to run one of these stacking pets, or specifically this stacking pet, Arcane Resonance, special skill of Thunder. Very, very good, but only when the battle lasts long enough to justify running a stacking pet. In all other battles that don't last long enough, and I don't specifically know the break point, you know, I'd have to do further testing. Maybe it's 4 minutes and 22 seconds, maybe it's 3 minutes and 40 seconds, maybe it is 5 minutes roughly, but there is a point after which for a longer fight you're going to want to run a stacking pet, which is going to decrease your damage done at the start of the fight and slowly and surely increase your damage towards the end of the fight. So because of that special skill and the use case in content that lasts longer than a certain threshold, let's say 5 minutes for the sake of this video, Thunder is actually going to rank slightly higher but just below the S tiers. So we'll put Thunder at A tier because of the fact that the special skill does have limited but very essential use in certain content for DPS, and as well I forgot to mention for healers as well. If you're a healer, because your heal skill off attack, you will also run Thunder in long content because this will give you a huge boost to your heals once you get to high stacking percentages. So Thunder deserves to be at A tier because of this ability. And now let's jump over to the next in the list here, which is Smarty. So let's quickly hop in the game and take a look at Smarty to see what they're all about. So Smarty is an interesting Melomon. Let's take a look at their awakening skill first. So increase all damage by 25% and double the damage bonus when HP is above 60%. Again, until you have Demon Hound, if this is your only legendary, you can run this, no problem. But it's not better than Demon Hound, so we don't even discuss it. And now let's take a look at the special skill of Smarty, which is Book of Answers. This is where it gets very interesting because we have, yes, another stacking skill. Randomly increase crit rate, haste, or determination by 7% every 20 seconds, and this effect stacks until the end of battle. So, depending on your class, this is a big depending on your class, this will be what you run alongside Thunder in battles that last longer than a certain duration. So for example, if you have a long waves run, or if you're in a very long boss fight, or any situation where you have a fight that's longer than say 4.5 or 5 minutes, you as a healer, for example, you will run Thunder plus Book of Answers, because as this continues to stack, the crit rate and determination will increase your healing output. The crit rate, the haste as well, is going to increase. No matter which one you hit as a healer, you're going to get a huge huge healing increase. The same for some DPS, not every DPS. And we've tested this, and we found actually, in most conditions, running one damage Melomon special skill plus Thunder is actually best. But there are some cases where certain DPS, like for example Ranger, actually, because Ranger abuses its basic attack damage so much, this crit hit and haste actually goes crazy after it stacks to a very high level, but it does severely reduce your damage in the early parts of the battle. So there is a breakpoint where you might run both Book of Answers and Thunder's Arcane Resonance in a long fight, but most of the times you'll probably choose to run Arcane Resonance plus one of the damage abilities like Echo or Your Turn. So with that said, let's hop back to the tier list, and I would say based on what we've just discussed, Smarty should be in the A tier, just below Thunder, because Thunder is more viable than Smarty, but still Smarty is more viable in turn than the Raven, which is more viable in turn than Frost Tiger and Wings of Light. Now, next up we have Kraimon. Kraimon, which is not a Pokemon, I promise. So, let's jump over into game and take a look at Kraimon. Kraimon. Their awakening skill is Query State. So, Increased damage of skills with the same element as the core skill by 25%, and the effect is increased further by 35% for non-core skills. This is a very, very specific and limited use case, of which I could pretty much only think of one option currently where this might be useful, and that would be maybe you could run this for a Wayfarer. But again, compared to Demon Hound, it just is not even in the same picture. So it just needs, yeah, it's just not that great. Let's look at its special skill, which is Chaos Gift. Every 30 seconds, 0 to 3 the following effects are randomly generated. Ignore 10% of enemies' defense, increase attack by blank or blank. So unfortunately, the special skill is cut off. But either way, I can promise you this, it's not that good. So unfortunately, what we will do is we'll hop back over to the tier list, and even though I can't show you the full special skill of Kraimon, let's cut to the chase and say, I am afraid this is going to be... Do we want to put this in D tier? Oh, are we going to be that harsh to Kraimon? I almost want to, but I think it's wrong to put any legendary in D tier, so I'll put Kraimon at the bottom of C tier because it's just not good. The awakening skill is very easily outscaled and such limited specific use case that, you know, and the special skill is essentially useless compared to all the other DPS special skills. So we won't even consider that. And then we get to our very, very last Melomon, the Chill Falcon. So let's take a look at the Chill Falcon in-game. So here's the Chill Falcon. Let's first look at its awakening skill. So, awakening skill, reduce core skill energy cost by 20% and increase ult damage by 25%. I would say a very mediocre awakening skill, nothing to really consider. It's okay. Again, if you don't have Demon Hound or any other DPS ability, DPS main Melomon, you could run this. That's fine. You won't hurt anything by running that until you get Demon Hound. And then let's take a look at its special skill, Chill Spreads. Now, Chill Spreads I need to clarify something about because some people have misunderstood how this works in one game mode, and that is waves. After entering battle, each time an enemy is defeated, deal 5,400% of attack as true damage to all current enemies. Now, this sounds absolutely insane for waves. If you think about waves, which is multiple waves of lots of enemies, if you think, well, if this deals this much damage every time an enemy dies, that's crazy, isn't it? Except that unfortunately, this ability does not trigger for every wave because every wave is not considered a new battle entry. So this will only trigger 4 times in the entire waves fight. It'll trigger once when you start the waves, and it'll trigger 3 more times at each boss battle. So unfortunately, as epic as we all thought this was at the beginning of the game, it's just not great. However, this is very good in the early game, the same way the other Snow Leopard ability, Surrounded by Me, is good in the main story journey progression in the early game. The Chill Spreads is also very good because if you run Chill Spreads plus Surrounded by Me as your 2 Melomon special skills, as you're progressing through the journey, this will literally just one-shot everything the second you enter battle. So until you reach about class change 1 journey, you can run Chill Spreads with Surrounded by Me in your main story journey and just one-shot everything until the enemies start to be scaled out of that. So again, very limited use case, an average Melomon, nothing to really write home about. So unfortunately, I'll just put it in C. I would say if we can put it in the top of C, just because you would use the special skill in early game progression compared to the others. So there you have it. My goodness, we finally made it through the tier list of legendary Melomon. And I hope this video now gives you a better understanding of what the best Melomon is in the game are, not just for your own spec, just as well as a generalization. So if anyone does ask you the question, hey, what are the best Melomon, you can say, well, I can tell you that now. You know, Demon Hound, Blade Hound, all that stuff, etc. So there you go. This is my version of the tier list for Melomon in the game right now for all DPS, healing, and tank specs, with all of their awakening skill and special skills taken into consideration. So there you have it. I hope you found this video helpful. Hit the like button if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. And join the Discord if you haven't already. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.